hard to put the genie back in the bottle once it gets opened, or the shampoo back in the bottle, or whatever. So we're right now going to continue with our Puerto Rico panel. Obviously, we're going to condense a few things just to be able to get to our cocktail party in time. We're also moving around a couple things because Brock Pierce, his plane got delayed, so he'll probably be about 3:20. And we're gonna probably make the break a rolling break. So, Giovanni, do you want to come up here? So, as you know, many of you know, I live in Puerto Rico. I was the first person from the blockchain community to move there. I was inspired by a number of people. Brock had actually talked about moving there for years, and I guess I was the first one who actually did it. And much of that is tribute to this man here. When I went down to check out Puerto Rico in early 2016, he really gave, when he was at BDO, a really good summary of the advantages and the responsibilities, and then my wife and I just really fell in love with the island too. He now has his own shop, and every time I go in, there's more and more employees, called GEO, which of course is a play on his name, Giovanni, but stands for Global Economic Optimization, and he is just by far and away the top tax lawyer in Puerto Rico, and to my mind, the biggest, sort of like proponent for all the great things that the crypto community and the blockchain can do for one another. So I'm going to let him go through a quick summary of Act 20 and 22 and why all of you who have crypto assets should consider moving to Puerto Rico, or at least starting a company there, and what the differences are between Act 20 and 22 and economic zones and a few other things. And then we're going to sit down and talk a little bit about Puerto Rico, and I'm going to bring up our friends from Glyph, who took a one-way ticket and moved to Puerto Rico and started a company there, and they presented at the CoinAgenda Caribbean. So, Giovanni.
Thank you, Michael. So I have a quick presentation that, as Michael said, we're going to talk about the tax incentives here available in Puerto Rico, and a little bit of the requirements, and also taxation issues for the cryptocurrency space. So this is the agenda. We're going to talk about Act 22, which is the Individual Investors Act, applies to, per the name, individual investors, and gives you benefits on passive income in the forms of capital gains, interest, and dividends. Basically, these would be 100% exempt from taxation. Act 20 is the Export Service Act, which has become more and more relevant in the blockchain space, and including ICOs. Act 273 is the International Financial Entities Act, which is also very relevant to the blockchain space, cryptocurrency space, and to exchanges, for example. And then, again, a little summary on taxes and blockchain. So the benefits of Act 22, as I mentioned, 0% capital gains, 0%, taxes on capital gains, interest, and dividends, which are sourced to Puerto Rico. The requirements, call them the ABCs. You apply for the grant, you become a resident of Puerto Rico, and then you comply and contribute. Compliance means, by federal IRS rules, 3 tests: the bona fide residency test, which are presence test, closer connections test, and tax home test. The most common way to meet the presence test is being present in Puerto Rico for at least 183 days. But interestingly enough, there's other manners, and there's a lot of people in the blockchain space that are digital nomads. There's a rule that says that if you're not present in the US for more than 90 days in a year, you don't have a minimum amount of days to be present in Puerto Rico. We always recommend being more days in Puerto Rico than in the US, but we have clients that are pretty much traveling the world and everywhere and nowhere in the same time. They could take advantage of this as long as they comply with the other 2 tests as well. And then contribute, there's a $5,000 annual donation requirement that the Puerto Rico government has established as one of the things, to give back to the island. But it's very easy to comply with for most clients, as the benefits are so large. Act 20. Act 20 gives you a 4% fixed tax rate on net income from revenues derived from export services. no additional tax on dividends and distributions, and then there's some other exemptions on local taxes like property tax. Requirements and considerations: the entity must operate from Puerto Rico. It can't be a shell company. It needs to be a legitimate operation in Puerto Rico, whether it has employees or not, but the owners could operate the entity with no additional employees, but definitely there needs to be a presence in Puerto Rico. With the changes in the U.S. tax regime, it's more relevant to consider CFC provisions for controlled foreign corporations, but it does represent additional benefits for people that don't necessarily want to move but can establish a company in Puerto Rico, as Puerto Rico qualifies for the 50% foreign dividend tax received deduction. So instead of paying a 21% corporate tax rate, you'd pay a total of 10.5% if you don't move to Puerto Rico, and if you do move to Puerto Rico, you'd pay a total of 4% tax. Act 273, I'm running through this because we have the panel, but you can ask me questions when I'm on the floor. Act 273 is the International Financial Entity Act. This is a very powerful vehicle because for one reason, it does give you a similar 4% tax on net income, but this is a financial charter issued by the Commission of Financial Institutions in Puerto Rico. You could be a bank, or you can simply be a financial service entity through this charter. There are crypto banks operating in Puerto Rico using this charter, and the Commissioner of Financial Institutions is very aware of the benefits for this in the blockchain community, so they're willing to work with them to get you one of these charters. Again, you can operate a money transmitter, an OTC desk, and other similar activities with this financial charter, and you could obtain a window in the Fed if you'd like to. Other incentive laws, there's the International Insurance Center. You can do insurance and reinsurance in Puerto Rico as long as you comply with the established requirements, capitalization, and diversification. Act 185 is for private equity funds. It allows not only tax incentives, but also a tax deduction based on the investment that the person makes in the fund that you can apply towards other taxes that wouldn't have been exempt otherwise. There are some diversification requirements as well. Act 29 is for private-public partnerships, more and more relevant nowadays, especially with the economic situation in Puerto Rico. Act 83 and 84 are for renewable energy. These one offer tax credits which could be generated based on your investment and energy generation. And these tax credits, which are up to 50% of your investment, can be sold in secondary market. They normally sell for anywhere between 85 cents and 91 cents a dollar. So it's a good way to receive cash or a cash return on your original investment. The Manufacturing Act, which is Act 73, has some similar tax credit generation capabilities, mostly for research and development. And we have companies that are, again, in the blockchain space or in the technology space that perform research and development for their technology and can generate these credits. EB5, Puerto Rico's one central regional center under the EB5 program. So there's many investment opportunities to be had for anyone that wants to obtain a golden visa from the US. Puerto Rico Film Industry Incentives Act, which also offers a 4% tax on the net income and the opportunity to generate tax credits based on the investment. And then the newest one is Opportunity Zones, which is not exactly a Puerto Rico act. It's a federal act, part of the US tax reform, but Puerto Rico is special to this because pretty much 99% of the island is considered an opportunity zone, including properties which are beachfront or by any of the beautiful locations in Puerto Rico. So this is gaining a lot of traction, and the real estate market is moving very quickly in Puerto Rico because of this opportunity zones. I think we can skip the blockchain and cryptocurrency matters because we talked about this a little bit. Basically, or very quickly, since the IRS labeled cryptocurrencies as not currencies but personal property, this is one of the elements that gives way for Act 22 to apply to crypto investors, as the gains from this personal property would be tax-free based on these IRS guidance.
Just stress, tax-free in the U.S. and tax-free in Puerto Rico.
Exactly, yeah. So basically, okay, then I will go into it. Since it is personal property, the gains are sourced to the location of the residence of the taxpayer. That means that if you move to Puerto Rico and you're a day trader in Puerto Rico, whatnot, you're sourcing your gains to Puerto Rico. So you, under the regime, you would not pay tax in the U.S., and then Puerto Rico gives you the Act 22 grant, which awards this 100% exemption on capital gains. Conclusions and opportunities, well, like I mentioned earlier, definitely advantages to be had both for individual investors and for businesses relocating to Puerto Rico. Maybe one point we should stress is that a lot of people weren't aware or maybe missed when you, for example, launch a new token, that is an income generating event that normally is taxed at ordinary rates in the US, and moving to Cayman, for example, won't help you anymore because of the CFC regimes and how they change unless you have foreign owners. So doing this from Puerto Rico, we could structure it as, for example, a software as a service transaction, where if you have a utility token, the sale of the utility token can be considered a prepayment of future services to be rendered. I always say this has a double benefit. One is that you get to tax these revenues at the 4% tax. And then another is if you have a real utility token, this goes along to prove the concept that it is a utility token, that a service will be rendered at some point. And that's why the investor, or not the investor, the purchaser of this token, purchase it with the onside of receiving this service. Yep. I think, Michael, this would be on the relevant portion. Thank you very much.
So was anybody prior to this considering moving to Puerto Rico or starting a business? Hands. Okay, not too many. Anybody intrigued after hearing this? All right, not bad.
Excellent.
Okay, so, and I guess,